Sadly, it sounds like George Kittle is actually going to be out, which is hilarious because I spent every injury update yesterday going, oh, yeah, he's questionable, but he's probably going to play. Oh, he's playing. I wouldn't worry about it. And yep, now the latest report is that George Kittle is more likely than not expected to miss today. Brutal spot. You also have no Laporta. You have no Kincaid. So it's really just going to be a difficult situation all around at tight end this week. And that report came from Adam Schefter. So since Schefter said it, I think you kind of have to believe it. I honestly am interested to know. I think Thomas has George Kittle in the Flock League, which is a little concerning because I think I need him to win this week. So like just making sure that I don't need to change anything with my own lineup here. Purdy is definitely less interesting with no George Kittle than if Kittle were to be good to go. I think you should lower expectations probably just a bit if you were looking at this Niners offense. So Hurts, Purdy, for me, I mean, hell, I still got to play Cousins. I still got to play him. I can't play Cousins in a really tough matchup. It does prop up Ricky Pearsall a bit, where I am more excited to play really all the receivers in San Francisco. I think you can be looking at Pearsall. I think that you can be looking at Jawan Jennings. Would I put Pearsall over Najee, over Metcalf, over Chase? No. So I'm probably leaving him on the bench, but I guess that freaking sucks. And yeah, I think it's Thomas who has Kittle that now is rolling with Dawson Knox instead. So, I mean, obviously Dawson Knox can be a viable pickup for you if you lost any of Laporta, Kincaid, or Kittle. The guy I got off the waiver wire was Pat Frymuth because I lost Sam Laporta this week. But it is just a really crappy situation to not have Kittle, of course. But we have some questions on the site. I don't think we have too many, so we actually should be able to get to some of the questions in the live chat as well this fine Sunday morning. And of course, if you have not done so already, please go down there, hit that like button. Sunday morning streams are by far and away the most important for us. We have not missed a single day of live streaming in 5 seasons. So make sure you hit that like. And then also, of course, if you wanted to get any questions answered, as a guarantee, you could always go to flockfantasy.com. You can hit the link in the live chat as well if you just wanted to do it that way. That says ask a question here. And all you got to do is head over to flockfantasy.com or hit that link in the live chats and then send it with the personal advice button. You can send in a super message, a start sit question, a trade question, or a team review, whatever you are wanting. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this, ladies and gentlemen. First start sit question we have coming out from Nelson. Appreciate you, my guy. We need to decide our flex here. Here for the flex, we are looking at Jonathan Brooks, Nick Chubb, Audric Estime, Deontay Johnson, Rome Odunze, Calvin Ridley, and Sam Laporta. For me, there are only 2 players that stand out in this range. There are only really 2 guys that I think you could consider. I'd be looking at Calvin Ridley and Nick Chubb. If you look at my flex rankings this week, I have Calvin Ridley at 47 and Nick Chubb at 48. So I would love to say, oh my gosh, it's easy. Go Ridley. Look at what he did last week. Blah, blah, blah. The reality is, if they're back-to-back in my rankings, truly it is just a personal preference, and truly it is just up to you. I mean, definitely don't go anybody other than Calvin Ridley or Nick Chubb here. Like, don't ever think you can be playing Deontay Johnson or Rome Odunze instead. But really, you're choosing between those 2 options. Can everybody please spam the chat and let me know who they would prefer out of Nick Chubb, Calvin Ridley? We got 1 vote saying it's a coin flip. But yeah, please let me know in the chat. Who are you going with, Chubb or Ridley? Chubb, Ridley, Ridley, Chubb, 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 Ridley, 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 Chubb, Chubb, Ridley, 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 Ridley. Chubb, 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 Ridley, Ridley, Ridley. It looks like it's split 50-50. Again, full PPR format. I have Ridley ranked one slot ahead, so I probably go ahead. I probably take Ridley. But really, it is just a personal preference, and it is up to you. Now, next question coming out from P. Burnap. Wide receiver 2, we're looking at Hopkins, I guess Pearsall now, Downs, Tillman, Amari. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Hopkins. You see a season high for when he's in Kansas City in route participation and snaps played this past week. Obviously, he doesn't crush. It's a really tough matchup that he had against Denver. Here it's a tough matchup again against Buffalo, but with the Chiefs as dogs, you can say that maybe they are forced to throw the ball here. Going over to tight end, we have Bowers is a very easy start. Montgomery is an auto start in this great matchup against the Jags. And then going down and looking at the last flex spot, here I think you can make an argument a couple different directions. I don't think I've seen any news regarding Amari, whether he's going to be good to go or not. If Amari does play, I would go with Amari, having no Keon as well as no Kincaid in this offense. I do think that Amari is set up in a really good spot to have success if he's good to go. Obviously, that'll be something you need to continue to monitor. If Amari were to be out, I think you're looking at either Cedric Tillman or Josh Downs. And for me, based on the offenses that they would be in, I would be going with Cedric Tillman as the backup to Amari if Amari is not good to go. Now, Chaffee coming out with our next question. Really appreciate you. Thank you for taking advantage of the free Underdog team review. Says, what trade should I make heading into the trade deadline after this week? We're just out of the playoffs, need to make a push. Well, looks like we got a little head start because we got to go up against 2-Point Terry this week, which is a really nice spot to be in. Just to confirm, this does look like maybe it's a... No, it is a full PPR format. Okay, cool. It's a league where you start 2 running backs, 2 receivers, a tight end, and a singular flex. So depth, not going to matter too much. We are primarily focused in on how we can make improvements inside the starting lineup. Starting off at quarterback, we are effectively just streaming the position. We have Matthew Stafford. Going down to the bench, I see Baker Mayfield. With Baker, obviously, he's been much worse over the past few weeks. But you should have Mike Evans coming back after the bye. So with Evans coming back after the bye, I do think that you get a potential Baker bump here. And would I be super excited about Baker? No, but I do think you view him in maybe a similar light to what you have, say, with like a Brock Purdy, where he is definitely the tier ahead of the other streaming options. Going over to what we have with the running back position, we currently are sitting with Eckler and JT. Bold call to play Eckler this week with Brian Robinson good to go. Obviously, with Eckler, he absolutely crushes. It was a really strong call. Going down to what we have on the bench, we have Bucky Irving. We have Jordan Mason. So we really don't have any running back depth. I mean, running back 2 behind JT is a pretty big hole for us until you get Pacheco back in. But with the possibility of Pacheco coming back to us next week and us already getting the value from Eckler, I do think that you're in a fine spot. Honestly, in a different scenario where maybe we didn't play Eckler on Thursday night, you could say, oh, we got to panic sell Pacheco just to make sure that we stay in the playoffs here. But honestly, Pacheco may be coming back just at the right time to kind of save the team. Going over to wide receiver, typically we want to be selling wide receiver depth to go get upgrades inside the starting lineup. We have Garrett Wilson, so we have a locked and loaded wide receiver 1 that we can be excited about. Beyond that, I mean, we are sitting with Tank Dell. The last thing I would ever want is to be putting Tank Dell into my starting lineup with Nico Collins back in. Dell was barely viable with no Nico. So I think upgrading wide receiver 2 would be a massive priority if we can. As going over to the flex, you have Jameson. But looking at the bench, I mean, you are sitting here in a really comfortable spot with Marvin Harrison, who's potentially coming in this next week. Going over to our tight end room, we are having to stream Dawson Knox for the time being because we have no Laporta this week. We have K. Dotton on bye. For me, the only thing I think we could potentially be doing with this roster, because you don't have much depth, and typically we want to be selling depth in a league with these leagues, with a team with these league settings, is I think really the only thing that you potentially could look to do here would be to go through and actually look to sell a tight ends, whether that's Sam Laporta or K. Dotton. If we can sell a tight end in a 2-for-1 deal with a wide receiver like Tank Dell to go get that wide receiver upgrade, I think that would be a phenomenal move. Because even if you're saying, well, we have Harrison here for the long term anyway, what you would be looking at is you'd be looking at the potential to go through and move that additional wide receiver depth piece into the flex as a pretty big upgrade there. So no matter how you cut it, I think that this is a team that's going to be a lot better after this week when we get these guys back from bye, when we get these guys back from their respective injuries. And I think thinking through this team from a long-term perspective, especially after this week, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and see if we can sell the tight ends and a 2-for-1 deal with Tank Dell to go get a better option in the flex. But really, based off the lack of depth with this team, you are in a position where you don't have too many moves you can look to make, to be honest. But I really think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the Flock, supporting the channel. And thank you for taking advantage of that free Underdog team review as well. I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. But let's move this over to Joy Boy J here with the start set question. Here we need to hopefully get Brian Thomas out of this starting lineup. We can't play Mike Williams over him. We can't play Michael Pittman over him. Keon Coleman's out. So you're kind of stuck with Brian Thomas here. Audric Estime would be the best running back. Could we play Estime over Chubb? CMC? No. Dawson Knox is a viable tight end streamer at this point if we need one. So I'm definitely not excited to have Brian Thomas in our starting lineup at this point, but I think you may just have to. Now, Joy Boy J coming out with another starting lineup. This is a 2-8 team where we absolutely have to win. The best options that we have on the bench with this team would be at wide receiver, Jacoby Myers. For me, I think Myers versus Juwan Jennings is a real conversation. I actually did rank Myers ahead of Juwan Jennings in our flex rankings. But for me, honestly, I think at this point, if you wanted to roll with Jennings based off the George Kittle injury, where Jennings should have a higher target share in this offense, especially a higher target share in the red zone as well, I think that you're in an okay spot where I'm not super excited to do it, but you definitely can play Jennings over Myers if you want. Looking at the best running back available, you have Najee Harris. For me, kind of the same thing here. I would rather have Najee over, well, real quick, let's go ahead and let's put Tillman at wide receiver because Jennings is the guy that I would get out if we were swapping anyone. I had Najee ahead of Jennings before the Kittle injury. I had Pollard ahead of Jennings before the Kittle injury as well. But now at this point, I think it is a lot tougher. Can I see what the underdog projections are right now? Jennings is higher, lower 50. That's actually much higher than it was before the Kittle news. That's what I was thinking, that you obviously have to bump him up. Yeah, now I'm completely fine with you going Jennings over those running backs. based off the Kittle information. And again, I think Ricky Pearsall is a little more interesting as well. Can I see, where do they have all of the Niners projected now? Dear God, they have CMC higher, lower, 126.5 total yards. CMC is officially back. Deebo Samuel, higher, lower, 75.5 total yards. Where's Ricky Pearsall? 39.5, 58.5. So yeah, I definitely should not be overthinking it. I should not try to get Pearsall into my lineup, but Jennings definitely a viable play now that you have no Kittle. But next question coming out from Castillo. Here, we need 2 flexes. We have no Pacheco this week. I think you're probably stuck playing Dowdle and Downs. If you are looking at Dowdle, you get the positive report coming out of Dallas from McCarthy saying that you should expect him to come through and actually see more usage and be more heavily involved. The issue, of course, is, well, does it really matter? Considering the fact that, I don't know, it's one of the worst offenses in the NFL at this point. So it's not a super easy call here. If you wanted to get anybody else in, it would be Jackson Smith-Njigba. I just, one thing, it's a pretty tough matchup for JSN going up against the Niners. And 2, at the same time, we should see the target volume fall based off DK Metcalf coming in. If you look at my rankings between JSN and Josh Downs, however, they are incredibly close. In the flex rankings, I have Downs 51 and I have JSN 53. So if you wanted to make that pivot, I wouldn't fault you at all for it. Hellboy Jordan, always happy to see him. My guy says, Tillman or Adams? I'm going to go Adams under the assumption he is good to go. A-Rich or Stroud? I'm going to go Stroud now that you do have Nico back in. 56 points back from a playoff spot in the total points league. Take risk or play it safe. So you have 4 weeks left. So effectively we need to average double-digit points gaining. So we are getting close to the point where you kind of do want to swing for the fences and take some risk. So I understand maybe making an argument, oh, let's go with the rushing upside with A-Rich to get a potential bigger spike week, but probably not. Running back, Kyron, CMC are the auto starts. Adams, Collins are the guys we want to go with here. Tight end, we're going to go David and Joey. This is a phenomenal team. I honestly don't think you have to take risk. Now that you have Nico and CMC back in, it should just be a much better roster overall. And we're going to go Aaron Jones in the flex spot, of course. But yeah, this is a phenomenal team. Now, let's go ahead and let me refresh these questions real quick. And, of course, if you have not done so already, please go down there. Hit that like button, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we are live streaming every single day. I've not missed a single day of streaming in 5 seasons now, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, and now 2024. But Sunday morning streams are by far and away the most important for us. So if you're ever going to hit that like button, I would kindly ask that you do it now. And also, of course, if you ever wanted to get in any questions over on flockfantasy.com, you can find the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. Or you could also just go over to flockfantasy.com, hit the personal advice button in the top right corner. Then you can send in a team review, super message, starts a question, or a trade question. But again, if you wanted that team review, what I would highly recommend doing, just because it's going to be a lot cheaper, is going over to Underdog Fantasy and using promo code FLOCK. Because if you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you'll be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game today. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single day. Just make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way we know who to go through and to credit with that free team review. But I think that should be it. You can find that link in the live chat as well, where it says free Aaron Rodgers pick here. But let's move this over, and we actually have a free team review coming from Utter Carton, who's asking, am I cooked? Well, we will see this, my friend. Our team name is Big Tiddy Golf Girls. Interesting. Or Golf Girls. I apologize. We are currently 9th in the league analyzer. It looks like teams 6 through 12 are all about the same. You have the Juggernaut team here at the very top ends. Going down to our roster, it is a league where you can start up to 4 wide receivers weekly. It's a 12-team format. So here, it's not necessarily a league that you want to exploit by just going after an elite level QB. So we are effectively just streaming the quarterback position right now, which I am fine with, as long as we understand that, yeah, Jared Goff is a streaming option. You have no rushing upside. It's a rush first offense. More likely than not, if you are looking at Jared Goff, this is a quarterback that doesn't have the ceiling to turn into that top 3 must-start option every single week. Going over to what we have at running back. We are currently sitting with James Cook, Josh Jacobs. So 2 3-down running backs that are in good offenses, that are very comfortable projections. We have Brooks, who potentially can do something here after the bye week, but we've been saying that for the past 3 weeks now. And then Jaylen Warren, who effectively is just that premium handcuff bag. If anything were to occur to Najee, then obviously Warren can turn into a must-start option, but definitely nothing guaranteed there. Now, going over and looking at wide receiver, we have Wilson, Amari, DJ Moore, Jameson. So it's a league where you can start 4 wide receivers weekly. And we don't really have much depth here at the wide receiver position. Like, if Amari's good to go, I'm excited to start Garrett Wilson and Amari, but I don't see how we can trust DJ Moore. I don't see how we can trust Jameson Williams at this point. So I would love to bolster up depth at wide receiver if we can. And there's a very clear path to doing so. It is insane. And when I say insane, I mean insane that you are currently rostering 4 different tight ends. We have the elite tight end with McBride that you can start every single week. Obviously, he's on bye this week, so completely understand having somebody else here instead. But then beyond that, you have Hawkinson, Kraft, and Ferguson. You need to find a team that needs a tight end like this team that has Dalton Kincaid. Can we go make a play for Kyler? They have Jaden Daniels and Kyler Murray. I mean, I don't care if we go after Kyler. I don't care if we go after Daniels. Whoever you want, can we get them? Can you send potentially Hawkinson and Goff to go get one of these quarterbacks? Cover them for their Kincaid injury? This team's rolling with Dallas Goedert currently. Is there a world where we can send them TJ Hawkinson and DJ Moore to get to Marvin Harrison? Or TJ Hawkinson straight up for T. Higgins? Let's see, who else needs a tight end? This team here is only rolling with Andrews. I mean, Andrews has been decent as of late, but realistically, likely back in, that's going to take a dive. But if this team thinks they could upgrade at tight ends, is there a world where you can send them Hawkinson and get Terry? I hate to be very boring and say that there's only one move that our team can make, but that's it. The only move our team can realistically make is go do whatever you can to sell 2 of these tight ends and go get upgrades at either quarterback or wide receiver. And then if you're able to make those 2-for-1 deals to get those upgrades and you can open up roster spots, then at that point you can effectively pick up guys like Tyler Algier, Braylon Allen, Jordan Mason for free off the waiver wire. These running backs that if an injury does occur to the guy in front of them, they fundamentally change your team for the rest of the season. So that's the main thing that I personally would be looking to do. And I really think it's the easy answer to this. And I really think it's the only thing your roster can do is you got to sell some of these tight ends. Don't just look to sell Jake Ferguson. Don't just look to sell Tucker Kraft. Obviously, those are the guys that we'd prefer to sell, but you're also not going to get that much for them. Instead, the main thing that I would love to do is see if we could potentially send away a player like TJ Hawkinson with the expectations that your league mates would be willing to pay up for him. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, thank you for being a member of the flock. Thank you for taking advantage of that free team review as well. And I really do hope I was able to help you out in some way here. Now let's move this over to Stacy says, need help with Kittle, expected to miss. So yeah, with no Kittle, you go Tucker Kraft. Eric All is obviously long-term. Gesicki, I think, would have been the play over Kraft, where Gesicki was disappointing last week, but you still did have a ton of target volume. If you had no T. Higgins. But now that Higgins is going to go, I don't think you can go with Gesicki over Kraft. At least I wouldn't. Going down to the flex spots. Here, we got to siphon through a bunch of different options. We have Rome Odunze, Wan'Dale Robinson as really the only options. I wish we could get in a time machine and go back and play Eckler. But we have no Pacheco. We have no Rachaad White. We have no George Kittle. So it freaking sucks. I think you actually have to flex a tight end here. I think you have to flex Gesicki. So who else could you play? You have no Wan'Dale Robinson. You have no Jalen Coker. I think you go with Rome Odunze, Mike Gesicki. Marshawn Lloyd's out. I obviously wish we could get in a time machine, and if we played Eckler, that's phenomenal. We have no Tank Bigsby. If Whittington's good to go, do you just play Jordan Whittington and send up a prayer that somehow, some way he finds the end zone? That's even if Whittington's good to go. I'm assuming we play at Eckler, right? There's no way in hell we benched Eckler if these are our flex options. At least I would hope. Now, C. Buffett coming out with our next question says, 6-4. We need a dub. Thanks, bud. Thank you, my guy. Going to be super excited. Check this out. We need a flex. And honestly, Juwan Jennings does look a lot more appealing post George Kittle injury. But for me, I still think you have to take Tyreek. While Tyreek Hill has been nothing close to the wide receiver that you drafted him to be, took him at the very beginning of round 1. The man's been an absolute bum if you are looking at him with that cost in mind. To be fair, you've had 3 full games with Tua. And in those 3 weeks, Tyreek Hill is averaging about 15, 16 points per game. And if you look at the matchup here against the Raiders, it should be one where the Dolphins are able to get right. Currently, you have sportsbooks putting Miami with an implied team total that's the 4th highest in the NFL. So for me, I think that this is a potential get-right game. I think I go ahead. I think I play Tyreek. Does it feel great? No, he hasn't been great. But I think you run with it. Now, next question coming out from Nick. Here, tight end, we are looking at Ingram versus Andrews. I'm going to go Andrews. It's maybe a little bit less exciting now that Isaiah Likely is fully good to go. Obviously, Andrews was a great play last week with no Likely. Going down to the flex between Harrison, Brian Thomas, Ingram, Quentin Johnston. We have no Harrison this week. It sucks. Quentin Johnston has gotten there with touchdowns, but not particularly volume. He's really helped out my underdog teams where we've taken Quentin Johnston. Like, I actually feel phenomenal about that pick. But realistically, I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if you can play Johnson with Ladd consistently earning the most targets. And if the touchdowns aren't there, the stat line just looks absolutely horrendous. It's a train wreck. So then we go Brian Thomas. Obviously, the offense is much, much worse, though. Now, next question coming out from Redemption says, don't tell the Bears fans he has to start Reed. Or don't tell the Bears fan. Well, let's see, my guy. You have so many good wide receivers, you don't have to start Reed. I think you can go CeeDee Lamb. Reed, Lamb, very different prototypes. Where if you're looking at CeeDee Lamb, this is a receiver that's going to have all the targets in a crappy offense. If you're looking at Jaden Reed's a wide receiver that's going to have few targets, but in a great offense with more touchdown upside and big play potential. But I still think you go Lamb here. I would probably prefer getting Lamb in the flex. However, just because he plays on Monday night, so just in case we need to find a pivot option. And then our other wide receiver between Reed and Amari, I probably do go with Jaden Reed here. If you are looking at Reed, again, you've only had, I want to say, one game this season with more than 6 targets. So you really are just banking on the big play. You really are just banking on the touchdown. But it has consistently come so far this season. And obviously, it is a great offense as well. Now, Phoenix Lance, always happy to see it. My guy says 0.2 point per carry, 6-point passing touchdown format. Are we going to go with Stroud with Nico back? Or Bo Nix, Russ, Goff, Gino? So 0.2 point per carry, 6-point passing touchdown kind of cancel each other out in terms of pocket passing options versus rushing quarterbacks. For me, I actually think I'd probably end up going with Bo Nix, though. I mean, we have seen the rushing with Nix, but at the same time, you actually do have a spot where you can expect a decent amount of points scored in this Denver Broncos offense. Right now, they have an implied team total of about 23.5 points. It's a spot where they are going to have to throw the ball if they want to keep up with Atlanta. Obviously, we're more excited about Stroud now that Nico's back in comparison to where we were previously with it. But I still think you can go ahead and take the guy that's been hot, that gives you some rushing, that has a good matchup, and a projected good game environment with Bo Nix. Real quick, I got to get the dog out of here. She's, oh no, I mean, come on, you got to go. You got to go. I can't. I know. I feel bad. One, the dog sleeps with me every single night. But she just keeps me up. And like, well, when she's in here every single second I'm live streaming essentially. But what she's been doing lately that drives me insane is just licking her paws nonstop. and just hearing that noise over and over and over and over again drives me insane. So it's definitely a me issue, but still. Anyway, going through and looking at this next question. Coming up from Hi Mason. Hello. Quarterback, we are going to go Love over Russ. I do like the matchup for Russ, and I think you can get the passing volume here against Baltimore. Obviously, we saw this Baltimore Ravens defense just give up a massive, massive game to Cincinnati. Wide receiver, I think you have to go Lamb with the guaranteed target volume. And then wide receiver 2, I'm going to go Brian Thomas. Obviously, with much lowered expectations, we're going to be going with the wide receivers that have talent but are in absolute garbage offenses. I will definitely play Malik Neighbors over these guys when Neighbors is back in, but obviously we can't with him on bye right now. But last I saw, it seems like Lamb's going to be good to go with the back injury. But also, I kind of said the same thing. I thought that George Kittle was going to be good to go. So it will be something to continue to monitor. Now, Jake A., appreciate you. Excited to check this out. Here, it's a start sit where we need a running back. We are going to take David Montgomery. Actually, no, we're going to go Chase Brown, full PPR format. You're going to throw Montgomery in the flex spot no matter what, right? Please tell me you don't have too good of a receiver. Yeah, we have Montgomery who we can put into the flex. Both Chase Brown and Montgomery are pretty much auto starts this week. With Brown, you're looking at a running back that back-to-back weeks, over 80% of the snaps, 11 targets this past week. I do think that you have a possibility of Khalil Herbert coming in and getting a little more involved. But until we actually see it, I think it's hard not to rank Chase Brown as if he is just the locked and loaded RB1 here. And then going over to tight end between Kraft, Taysom, Dallas Goedert. For me, I'm going to go ahead. I will take Goddard. I'm sorry, we'll take Kraft if you didn't already start Goddard. If it was a non-PPR format, I think you could make an argument for Taysom, given the fact that non-PPR league, you are just chasing touchdowns. And I do think that Taysom's a little more likely to see that touchdown than you are to see with Kraft. But both are strong options, of course. Now, Gears coming out with our next question says, no idea if we should start Dobbins, Hunt, Debo, or Wilson. Okay. We're going to go Hunts, where with Hunt, what's actually surprising is you did get to see the receiving usage this past week, which was the first time we've had that. It's actually something that you really needed to see here going up against Buffalo as well, where the Bills are favored in this game. Let me confirm. What time is this game? It's in Buffalo, so I'm assuming. Okay, it's a 3 p.m. game. 3 p.m. Central, that is. The Sunday night game is the Bengals-Chargers. Great Sunday night game. I'm excited to see. But Chiefs-Bills should be the game of the week. The early slate, I would say the most fun game to watch is probably going to be the Ravens-Steelers. Looking at a lot of these games this week, they are just garbage. Dolphins-Raiders, garbage game. Browns-Saints, garbage game. Colts-Jets, garbage game. Vikings-Titans, garbage game. Packers-Bears, garbage game. Rams-Patriots, garbage game. Lions-Jags, garbage game. Ravens-Steelers, super interesting. Seahawks-Niners, pretty interesting. Chiefs-Bills, maybe the game of the year. Bengals-Chargers, super pumped. Cowboys-Texans, garbage game. But seems like this week we don't have a lot of good games. We have a few great games to look at. But issue is, of course, if you're just looking at so many of these, Danny out here says Cowboys, Texans, best game. Cowboys Texans is what I would like. That's how I would comp the matchup that I had with Danny last week. Where last week, obviously, I was the Texans in this scenario. Great defense, great coaching staff, just absolutely puts a beat down on Danny, who couldn't do anything similar to the Dallas Cowboys. But anyway, the issue is that you're just looking at so many of these teams being out of it at this point. The Jets, Dolphins, Patriots, all effectively playing for nothing. The Raiders playing for nothing. The Broncos, pretenders. Browns playing for nothing. Jags playing for nothing. Titans playing for nothing. Colts pretty much playing for nothing. Giants playing for nothing. Cowboys playing for nothing. Bears playing for nothing. Panthers, Saints playing for nothing. So at this point of the year, you just have so many of these teams that are just completely out of it. But let's go ahead and let's dive into this next one. I'm sorry, we got derailed here from Gears. You play Kareem Hunt auto start with Dobbins. A little concerning that you have Edwards back in seeing usage. We're going to go Garrett Wilson, which is the safe target volume. And I actually think that Deebo Samuel is an even better play now that you have no Kittle. And I think expectations should be Kittle's. No Kittle means it's more likely for Deebo to see that touchdown inside the red zone. It's more likely to get some of the artificial touches around the line of scrimmage. I think Deebo's set up to absolutely crush here. No Kittle. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next question. Coming out from Will says, hey Mason, 3-7 team, unlucky. We need this win. Quarterback, Geno, tough matchup. I think you're going to go with Drake May going up against the Rams. You have an implied team total of 19.5 points, which is much higher than what we're typically used to seeing with this Pats offense. Going down to the flex, I think you go with Cedric Tillman. Ricky Pearsall's more interesting now that you have no George Kittle. But I don't think you can take him over Tillman, where Tillman's had the consistent target volume as well. So for these two slots, for me, I'm going to be going with May and Tillman. But obviously, phenomenal lineup besides that. We have 2 RB1s and 2 wide receiver 1s. Now, Riley Fuentes coming out with a start sit. Here are best options that we currently have on the bench. At wide receiver, you have Josh Downs. At running back, you have Dobbins. I'm not going to be changing anything here in terms of the starting lineup, running backs and receivers. But for me, I would still probably flex Dobbins over JSN. While, yes, it's concerning that you have the Gus Edwards usage, Dobbins is still going to be the back with the receiving role. It still projects to be a high-scoring offense. They are favored in this game against Cincy. While it's close, they can potentially run the ball here in the second half. Danny, can you please let me know in the chat, who would you go with? Would you go with Dobbins or JSN? As JSN, target volume should come down with Metcalf coming back in. You're going up against the Niners, where we assume that you have a ton of Geno dropbacks. But for me, I think I'd pivot to Dobbins. Quarterback, Tua versus Russ. Yeah, the Dolphins projected out to be the 4th highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. I'm fine with Tua, obviously, kid on bye. And then, yeah, Danny also going with Dobbins here as well. So, yeah, I think you go Dobbins over JSN and make that swap. Vex Dots coming out with our next question. Here we need a receiver. I'm sorry, you still got to play Tyreek. Dolphins projected to be the 4th highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. I hate to say it because I know just absolutely everybody rolls their eyes. Everybody wants to scream at me that I'm an idiot. I think we're in line for a Tyreek bounce back. Tyreek's been bad. You haven't had a game with 15 or more points since week 1. But I think the games without Tua are completely meaningless. The games with Tua played fully. You are averaging about 15, 16 points. It's a great matchup against the Raiders. Do I have Tyreek ranked as a top 3 wide receiver? How we had him coming into the season? Of course not. I have Tyreek as a low-end wide receiver 1. But still, I still think he's a must-start option. And then looking down at the flex, you just got to play Jacobs. I know some of these receivers maybe are appealing, like DeAndre Hopkins. But Jacobs, it's stupid simple. You have a 3-down running back and a good offense. When you have a 3-down running back and a good offense, you got to jam them in. But real quick, we are 1 like away from hitting 400 likes in this live stream. It looks like less than 10% of y'all have hit that like button. So please, if you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on the stream. Now, Giovanni coming out with our next question says, wide receivers start help after Terry let me down. Should have known I was going up against Terry in the Flock League, my friend. If you would have known that, you'd have realized that your boy had clearly set up a phenomenal defensive game plan to shut down 2-point Terry, which we did. But here, I think it's really just Darnell Mooney or T. Higgins. Not the best matchup for Mooney. Obviously, wide receiver 2s are set up to potentially play better against Denver than wide receiver 1s. Higgins is completely off the injury report. However, it's not like you have to be worried about him being banged up at all, or at least based off what they're telling us here. I initially had Mooney ahead of Higgins in my flex ranks, but it was only by 2 slots. I think now that Higgins is completely removed off the injury report, you definitely consider. Can we see what the projections are for all these options on Underdog? Higgins, they have higher, lower 56.5 receiving yards. Jennings, we already saw this, higher, lower 58.5 receiving yards. Jennings, you just have to move up with no Kittle. And then Mooney is higher, lower 55.5. So they're all right in the same range. For me, because Higgins is removed entirely from the injury report, I am going to go Higgins over Mooney, despite me having Mooney higher in my flex rankings this week. But when we get that late positive news for Higgins, I'm completely fine to change my mind. I think Mooney's probably the guy you bench here. Now, Cole Kelly coming out with our next question. Here we're trading away Tucker Kraft, getting Kittle. I'm going to go Kittle. The question is, how many weeks would Kittle have to miss for this to not be worth it? Because Kittle was my tight end 1 in my rest of season rankings before this news. Now, honestly, I probably should go update the rest of season ranks. I probably should move Kittle a bit a bit lower here. Like at this point, realistically, getting the extra game from Kelsey, getting the extra game from Bowers. I'd probably prefer both of them to Kittle, as we don't know how long this Kittle injury is going to linger. But yeah, even if Kittle were to miss 2 to 3 weeks, it's still Kittle here relatively easily. It may not be my tight end 1 overall anymore because you do have some inherent injury risk. But there's a good shot Kittle's just back next week. Now, Love Hurts coming out with our next start sit question says, also traded Brian Thomas Jr. for Jennings. What are your thoughts? Thank you. Thank you. Brian Thomas Jr. versus Jennings. If you look at my rest of season ranks, I will have Brian Thomas Jr. ranked ahead of him. That's because Lawrence hasn't been ruled out for the season yet. If Lawrence does end up getting ruled out for the season, I would be okay with the deal. But if Lawrence is back, it's Brian Thomas Jr. relatively easily here, and you would have lost the deal by a decent margin. Tight end, you for sure go David Njoku. I mean, Njoku must start tight end each and every week at this point. You actually do have a really nice projection here for this Browns offense this week. Going over to the receivers, or the flex options, we should say. Full PBR format, I'm going to go DJ Moore and Ricky Pearsall. I think Pearsall gets a small bump with no Kittle. Still definitely think Pearsall is going to come back down to earth just a bit. I really hope I'm wrong with this. Pearsall, I think number 1 is Leggett. Number 2 is Pearsall. And wide receivers, I have the most money invested into in underdog drafts this year. So I'm really hoping Pearsall continues to play extremely well. But realistically speaking, I do think that he is behind Debo, Jennings, Kittle, CMC with the target totem pole. We get lucky with the long touchdown this past week. So I do expect him to regress just a bit, but it's like, who else are we going to go with? Are we going to go Estime in a full PPR format where Estime hasn't had a single target this season? I don't think I can, so I'm just going to go DJ Moore and Pearsall. Now, Skip Payless, appreciate you, says, made a blockbuster trade in the AM. Sit Montgomery, Kelsey, Lockett for Neighbors, McBride, Ramondre. Then I also flipped Ramondre and Pearsall for Tracy and Jawan Jennings. Ramondre to Tracy upgrade, Pearsall to Jennings upgrade. Love that move. Montgomery to Neighbors. Lateral move up to you. Probably honestly an upgrade. What am I talking about? Kelsey to McBride. Slight downgrade. Lockett to Ramondre. Big time upgrade. I love both deals. Love both deals here, my guy. And of course, I appreciate it. I know you're out here. You're out here with us often, just because I love the name. That's why I remember. Well, let me hook you up with a free start sit question, just in case I haven't already. Running back, we have no Tracy and no James. I guess you have to start Braylon Allen. Absolutely hate to see it, but with Connor and Tracy on bye, what other option do we have? We're going to lock in Puka, auto start every single week at this point. You can say the same thing about London. Obviously, London, tougher matchup this week. Tight end, we're going to go Hawk over Kraft. Definitely look to sell one of these tight ends if we can in a 2-for-1 deal with one of the running backs getting RB upgrade at this point. And then going over to the flex between Tillman and Jennings. I had Tillman ranked ahead of Jennings before the Kittle news, but especially now, like just seeing the updated projections that you have with Jennings with no Kittle, I think it is going to make it a tough spot. You have them within a yard. You have Jennings higher, lower 58.5 receiving yards. Tillman higher, lower 57.5 receiving yards. Can y'all please spam the chat? Would you rather have Jennings or Tillman in your starting lineup? Are you going to go Jennings or Tillman with no Kittle? Please let me know. Danny says Tillman, but it's close. Jennings, Tillman, Jennings, Tillman, Jennings, 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 Tillman, Tillman, Jennings, Tillman, Tillman, Jennings, Jennings, Tillman, Jennings, Jennings, Jennings. Looks like most people have Jennings. The underdog projections have Jennings as a slightly better play. Again, I do want to reiterate, I think it's up to you. I had Tillman ranked ahead of Jennings before the George Kittle news. But now that we know that you have no Kittle, I definitely think that Jennings is more interesting. But let me go ahead and refresh this real quick. Okay, give me 1 second here, ladies and gentlemen. I am sorry, ladies and gentlemen. The caffeine hit me. Your boy had to go to the bathroom, but there's no way I could have waited another hour and a half to do that. But anyway, we are back. The Undertaker with this question says, would like a strong third running back. Not sure if it is worth it. So going through looking at this, pivoting from Harrison to Chase Brown. Honestly, I think you can make an argument to have Chase Brown straight up at this point. Going from Reed to, Reed to Higgins, slight downgrade, up to you. You're going to get the extra game from Reed. Dell to Waddle, a lateral move, up to you. Jerry Jeudy has zero impact on this deal. It is a league where you can start 4 wide receivers weekly. Looking at this running back, we have Walker, Derrick Henry, Estime, Jonathan Brooks. Wide receiver afterwards, you would have Cup, Higgins, Tillman, Waddle. Honestly, I don't know with this. It's a spot where I don't really think you need a running back, to be honest with you. Again, 10-team league. Judy's not even worth the roster spot. Dell to Waddle's a lateral move. Reed to Higgins, slight downgrade. Harrison to Chase Brown, up to you. I have Chase Brown higher in my rankings rest of season. If you really wanted the extra running back, I mean, it's fine to go out there and get Chase. Danny says Brown equals Reed. Oh, Chase Brown's way better than Jaden Reed at this point, my guy. I know you have Chase in the Flock League. Honestly, I'm a big Chase guy. At this point, I'd be happy to go through and snag Chase from you. Obviously, you know as well, at this point, I'm pretty much guaranteed a playoff spot with my dominant roster. I know you're fighting for a spot to get in. You're out of the playoffs right now, so you can't really have players on bye. So maybe I could hook you up with like a Najee for Chase Brown. Given the fact Najee's already through his bye week, right? And you really need to fight for that playoff spot. But Marv equals Higgins. Dell versus Judy and Waddle is fine if he needs a running back. And honestly, it is up to you here. It is up to you. But let's move this over to our next question. So, Danny, whenever you send me over Chase Brown for Najee, let me know and I'll open up the app and I'll accept it real quick. And just hope the rest of the league doesn't get mad and claim collusion that I'm making your team too strong. But anyway, here, wide receiver for Saram. Saram's a long-time member of the Flock. Always happy to see him. We have no Harrison this week. I think you just have to go ahead. You have to play Cedric Tillman at this point over Xavier Worthy. And then in the flex spot, we're going to take the running back that's in the garbage offense, but should see effectively every single touch in his backfields. We are going to go ahead and take Rico Dowdle. You have some usage as a receiver. Obviously not an exciting spot to ever go through and have to play 2 Cowboys. But realistically, Dowdle's like the only guy here that you have the guaranteed volume with. Now, James Drillette says 7-3. Quarterback, we have Hurts. Running backs are Gibbs, Jacobs, Dobbins. Wide receivers are Amon-Ra, Zay, Evans, Waddle. Tight end is Hunter Henry. Wide receiver, St. Brown to Jefferson. Definite upgrade. For me, 7-3 roster where you're only thinking about the fantasy football playoffs. With Chuba, I do want to reiterate, Chuba's the starting running back here. Even if Brooks comes in, Brooks is not going to be viable in fantasy. Brooks is not going to take that job from Chuba. But if Brooks comes in and just sees the receiving usage, and Chuba turns into a running back in a committee in one of the worst offenses in the league, for the fantasy football playoff stretch, like Mike Evans will be a significantly better option. A running back with Gibbs, Jacobs, Dobbins, I don't see how you start Chuba, to be honest. Trading away Evans, you're at that point possibly looking at Waddle as your wide receiver 3 in this league, which obviously would not be anything close to exciting. I would rather have St. Brown and Mike Evans, to be honest with you. But I know also people are freaking pumped for Chuba Hubbard with how good he has looked. So I'm not going to fault you for making the move. Now, Phil, always happy to see you. 5-5. Smith gave me 7 points. What are you thinking? Quarterback here, I think you go ahead and you take Drake May, get the rushing upside, decent matchup against the Rams. You have a higher projection with this Patriots offense this week with an implied team total of 19.5 points than we've pretty much seen at any point so far this season. So I think May is definitely a start that you can get by with. Running back, Chase Brown, Brees, both auto starts effectively. Wide receiver, London in the tough matchup, we still go with. We're going to go Andrews over Hunter Henry. It's closer now for sure that you have Isaiah likely good to go. And then we're going to take the other running back that just gets the guaranteed 3-down workload in what is a good offense with Kareem Hunt. Do not have to think about that one too much. Now, here it's a CMC help, please. Big fan of the channel. First time using Flock Fantasy. Appreciate any and all help, Mason. Really appreciate you, my guy. And I'm here to tell you, CMC is going to help you a ton. I don't think you have to worry about that whatsoever. Looking at the projections you have with CMC this week, CMC is literally higher, lower, 127.5 total yards. Like the man is RB1 potentially. I mean, I had him RB1 in my rankings this week. We still have Barkley RB1 rest of season, but he's right there with Barkley back and forth. The best options we have on our bench to get into the starting lineup would be presumably Josh Downs. There's no way I could start Downs over Dobbins, Debo, or Adams with Pittman good to go. And more importantly, A-Rich is the starting quarterback here. So I think we leave this lineup as is. At tight ends, you could pivot over to Evan Ingram. I would rather have David Njoku, who's going to be in an offense with more points scored, significantly more passing volume as well. So yeah, I think it's a great team. I think that CMC Henry is going to be an unbeatable combo down the stretch. I think we're rolling as is. Now, Miguel coming out with our next question says, start JK over Quentin Johnston or Josh Downs, and then start the Houston or Chargers defense. You for sure start the Houston defense against Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys instead of Joe Burrow. And then we are for sure going to go with Dobbins over Quentin Johnston. The only guy that you could consider pivoting off of is Downs. If you wanted to move from Downs to another one of these options, such as Jalen Waddle or Brian Thomas or Quentin Johnston, I wouldn't fault you for it. Last week, we had with Anthony Richardson as the starter. You only had like 150 passing yards for A-Rich, but also with that being said, I mean, you ended up getting like 100 of those yards going in the direction of Josh Downs. So I'm going to go Downs, but if you wanted to pivot to somebody else, it would be Brian Thomas. Now, Core G says, need some help with my flex options and running back full PPR. We're going to go ahead. We will take Dobbins, Cup and London are the auto starts. So really, actually, we have to think about this a bit. It's either Dobbins or Chubb. I definitely think that they are closing the gap with each other as the season goes on. I still would rather have Dobbins at this point where we just haven't seen any involvement at all from Nick Chubb as a receiving back. I still have more faith in the Chargers than I do the Browns as well, despite them projecting out similarly this week. And then you can say, well, Dobbins is losing some work to Gus Edwards, but it's not like Chubb has every single touch in his own backfield, and Chubb hasn't cracked 10 fantasy points all year now. So I think you just go ahead and you take Dobbins until you see otherwise. And then, yeah, the receivers here with Cup and London are auto starts, and it's an insane team with Nico, Chase, Cup, and London. Now, E-Dog coming out with their next question says, need help with the flex this week in a full PPR format. We have no Hubbard. We are really choosing between Jennings, Myers, and Pollard. I had Pollard ranked ahead of Jennings in our flex rankings coming into this, but honestly, at this point, I think that you kind of have to go through and I think you have to take Jawan Jennings with no Kittle. With no Kittle in this offense, I think you should have a higher TD rate for Jennings and more usage in the red zone in particular. If you wanted to go with somebody else here, I guess at wide receiver you could consider Jacoby Myers. I just think that Jennings is going to be in the much better offense between the two. And Jennings did see 11 targets last week. Now, Shane coming out says, love you, miss. Much love, my friend. Really do appreciate you stopping by this fine Sunday morning. Here, running back, Kareem Hunt, still a must-start option every single week until you... Actually, we have James... We have a couple good running backs. We're going to get Kareem Hunt in that flex spot, more likely than not. Wide receiver, we're going to go Pickens in a phenomenal matchup. We will go with Devontae Adams as well. Adams, definitely you have reasons to be concerned based around him missing practice Wednesday, Thursday with the wrist and illness. Obviously, the Jets offense has been very bad, but sportsbooks are telling us that they should be in line for a pretty big bounce back this week. While at the same time, you have seen consistently at this point, Devontae Adams hitting 10 targets a game. Going over to tight end, we're going to go Hunter Henry. He's going to be in the better offense and probably higher target share, to be honest. And then down there in the flex spot, we're just going to take the running back that's in a good offense that projects out to have a 3-down workload. Now, obviously, the offense projects to be worse this week than what we're used to here in KC, just given how bad the matchup is going up against Buffalo. Let's move this over to our next question coming out from Big Route. Says Tillman or ETN in a standard league. Non-PPR format, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Travis Etienne. Full PPR league, I'm going to go Tillman. Obviously, ETN, you get a bump up with no Bigsby here. Am I super excited about it? Of course not. It's hard to be excited about a running back in arguably the worst offense in the league with no Lawrence. But I don't know. I still think you can run with it. Just trying to think through this realistically. Like, obviously, full PPR format, you go Tillman because the difference between the 4 receptions is going to be a pretty big deal. And, oh, I'm an idiot. It says Estime. Not ETN, it's Estime. Estime definitely more exciting in a non-PPR format than he is in a full PPR league as well. Whereas if you are looking at Estime, this is a running back that's not had a single target all season, but should have the first and second down role here in Denver. I'm going to go Tillman over Estime in that instance. I'll go Tillman over Estime because Javonte's still healthy, and I think Javonte plays a role even if Estime's a starter. Joe says, disregard this league. Sit Chase Brown or Cooper Kupp. Chase Brown versus Kupp, very difficult. I don't know how strong your roster is to make this call. I probably bench Chase Brown in favor of Cooper Kupp if I had to choose. Obviously, I'd rather play both if possible. But if we are going to try to maybe make a tiebreaker here, if you look at Chase Brown, there is the outside chance that all of a sudden you do see Khalil Herbert coming in and taking some usage here. But again, I don't feel great with it. I would love to play both if possible. But let me go ahead and refresh this so we can get some more of the questions coming in. Okay, perfect. We don't have too many more questions to go through, so One, if you got your question in, should be answered very, very quickly. You can see all the questions in the queue are fit on the screen here. So one, if you get a question in, should be answered super quickly. And two, looks like we should have some time to answer some of the questions in the general chat as well. But of course, if you wanted to get a guaranteed answer to any of your questions, you can always go over to flockfantasy.com. You can hit the link in the live chat as well that says ask a question here, or just go over to flockfantasy.com, hit the personal advice button in the top right corner. There you can send in a super message, start sit question, trade question, or get a full-blown team review, whatever you are wanting. I would recommend, however, if you wanted that team review, to take advantage of the offer that we have over there on Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you'll be looking at a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game today. And on top of that, you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we are doing every single night. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way I'm able to go ahead and credit you with that free team review voucher. All right, let's move this over. And we actually have a free team review. Nick here took advantage of that Underdog offer. Appreciate you, my guy. Going to be super excited to check this out. Says, first time playing fantasy football. We were 8-2, almost certain for the playoffs. How can we improve the team? And do we get a better receiver? Thanks for your content and the voucher. No, thank you so much again for being a member of the flock. Excited to check this out. Team name here is Amana's Magnificent Team. So it looks like we never updated the team name. I think this is a basic ESPN name. So it would be nice if we could go through and update this. Update the profile pic too as well. We can't be sitting here with just the basic ESPN profile pic. But anyway, looking at the squad, you are by far and away the best team in this league, according to the league analyzer. We have significantly more value than anybody else. So to just be completely honest with you, my friend, it's going to be difficult for us to come through and have a ton to do here. You're probably in a spot where I'm going to go, good team, just ride it out. Now, obviously, if we are 8-2, we are primarily just thinking about the fantasy football playoffs. We don't particularly care too much about what we are going to have over the next few weeks. It's definitely something to think about. It's just not the number one priority. Looking at quarterback, we are sitting with Jalen Hurts. When we have Hurts, we're in a great spot. He's a quarterback that you can start every single week, regardless of the matchup. You're already through the bye week as well. So really, there's nothing to discuss. You don't need another quarterback. You don't need to even look at this for one more second than we already have. Going over to what you have at running back. We are currently sitting with Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. This is why we are by far and away the best team in this league. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So for us to have Saquon Henry, Jalen Hurts, just dominating our output every single week, it is going to be extremely difficult for our league mates to catch up with us, even if they were to just go all in and really hammer in wide receiver depth. Because even looking at wide receiver depth, you can only get 3 wide receivers at the very most into your lineup. Right now we have Neighbors, Metcalf, Terry, Hopkins, Smith, Judy. So we are completely fine at wide receiver. I would make a waiver wire pivot myself, where I personally would rather have Ricky Pearsall instead of Jerry Jeudy. So if we could make that flip, I would. Where I would drop Jeudy, I would pick up Pearsall off the waiver wire. Looking at tight ends, we currently are sitting with George Kittle. with Kittle, this is a tight end that we can start every single week that he is healthy. Obviously, now it looks like we need the second option because you do have the injury to Kittle, so we have Pitts. Realistically speaking, this is a phenomenal team. We knew it before we even pulled it up. The only thing we could potentially make an argument to do is go ahead and consolidate wide receivers. And if you could potentially take Terry McLaurin and DeAndre Hopkins, send them in a 2-for-1 deal to go get a better wide receiver. If you could take DeAndre Hopkins, DK Metcalf, send them in a 2-for-1 deal to go get a better wide receiver, we would. But again, it is much, much easier said than done. It's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format, so the wide receiver depth not going to matter a ton. And we are just absolutely dominant again in this league if you're looking at our roster with the league analyzer in comparison to everybody else. So I really wish I had more for you here. But to be honest with you, you are just sitting with a phenomenal team, and it's very difficult for me to say much with this. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, I really do appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And thank you so much for taking advantage of that free team review. I wish I had more for you. You just have the best team in the league by far, so there's not much I can say. But thank you. Really appreciate you and really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. But let's move this over to Law Henney says, this week I have a tough decision between Dobbins, Waddle, and Tillman. Who get out? Thanks for the help. Thank you. A running back, Montgomery, is an auto start. Wide receiver, Debo, is an auto start. Going over to tight ends, we play Tucker Crap with no Laporta. Drop Brock Wright. There's no reason to have him. And then going down to what we have in the flex spots. You have no James Conner this week. So really it's Dobbins, Waddle, Tillman, Downs. I think you go Dobbins. You take the running back with the 3-down workload in a good offense. Obviously, Gus Edwards getting involved some, but Dobbins is still the running back that will have the receiving volume. And then going between Tillman and Josh Downs, I'm just more confident with the passing volume being there in Cleveland than I would be with it in Indy with Anthony Richardson at this point. So I'm going to go ahead. I will take Tillman in that instance over Downs. I'm going to go Tillman over Downs. Now, Ghost coming out with our next question. So Start Sit says, CJ with Nico back or Bo. Thanks for all the help, Mason. No, thank you. I am still going to go Bo Nix over CJ. The issue with CJ Stroud this week, at least, is you're playing the Cowboys where the Cowboys are just not going to be able to effectively move the ball down the field. So I do think you potentially have a little bit of passing volume limitations here in Houston. That would be my primary concern. And also, if you are looking at what you have specifically with Bo Nix, of course, this is a quarterback that has given you some rushing upside too. So I think you can go Bo. Going over to wide receiver between Jameson, Ricky Pearsall. I'm not considering Juju here. I'm going to go Ricky Pearsall. This would have been maybe a little bit closer if it wasn't for the Kittle injury. But with no Kittle, I definitely think you can make an argument to just say Pearsall is going to see the expanded role in the red zone. And then going over to the flex, we are just going to take Rico Dowdle. If you're looking at Dowdle, this is a running back that's in a garbage offense, but at least should have a 3-down workload. Now, Tony coming up with our next question says, safe pivot off of Brooks, or is it too early? I would rather have Brooks in a dynasty format, possibly. Obviously, this is a dynasty league. My thing with Dell is, and y'all know, I mean, I was not a fan of Dell this year. I was a Dell doubter last year. I was throwing dirt on his name and just saying he looked like a massive historical outlier. Not only from the size, but also the age of Tank Dell as well. where if we go through and if we pull this up, Tank Dell age. Dell is 25 years old. I know this is his second season in the NFL, but Tank Dell stayed forever in college. So from a dynasty perspective, I don't necessarily view either of these guys as pieces that are moving the needle for you this season. And I have more long-term hope with Jonathan Brooks. Like, the thing is, if you drafted Brooks to hold him this long to right before he comes back, to then effectively just sell him at a loss, I understand Hubbard's look good and Hubbard gets the contract. But I don't know if it's good. If you were going to sell Brooks the week before he comes back, why did we draft him in the first place, if that makes sense? Now, Tiro Burt's coming out with our next question. Here at wide receiver, we are going to go ahead. We are going to take Jaden Reed still over Jennings. Jennings definitely. And then we're going to go Jennings here in a full PPR format. I would rather have Jennings over Nick Chubb in the flex. But yeah, again, I think Jennings has to move up. You know what? I forgot. Let's move him up in our week 11 rankings right now on the site. Create rankings. Let me just make sure we update these in case anybody's looking at them right before the games. As we keep talking about how Jennings moves higher for me in my rankings this week with no Kittle, but I haven't actually updated it. Like, for me at this point, I would rather have Jennings over JSN. I'd rather have Jennings over Ridley. I'd rather have him over Sutton. I think this is about the range where you get to where you have to start considering maybe the other options, such as like Ladd McConkey. And we actually, based off the Buffalo news, we need to move Shakir here as well. I'd probably rather Shakir over Downs. I'd rather Myers over Downs. So let me go ahead and update these. Well, let me see if we have any additional news regarding who's in and who's out this week. So actives, inactives obviously came out about 22 minutes ago. Adams active for week 11, Boyd active. And that's, I guess, the only news we have. Is there anybody else that we are looking at? I guess we're not going to get confirmation with Amari, right? I don't think we know if Amari Cooper is out yet or not. And no, we do not like Josh Downs this week. Sadly, obviously, we called Downs a buy low candidate. Looks like it was a horribly wrong call. Coaching staff had repeatedly said that Flacco was their guy. Then they flip-flopped back to A-Rich. And Pittman is now good to go. So with A-Rich under center, Pittman good to go. I think you have to lower expectations with Josh Downs quite a bit. Now, Gabriel coming out with our next question says, I'm naked at running back and willing to give up Najee for chips. Najee to Brian Robinson, upgrade. Wilson to Amari and Bucky, massive downgrade. I don't think you can do this. Like, even if you really need help at RB here, if you really needed help at running back, like, the thing is, even this deal I'm not that excited about. Because Garrett Wilson is by far and away the best player in this trade. So, I mean, you do you if you really need a running back, but I think you look for a better deal. Average Joe coming out says, Darnold, Disley, both, but don't show up in player pool to pick. Need a flex and May or Darnold at quarterback. I'm going to go May at QB. Tight end, you said we're going Disley. And then I'm sorry, my guy, you didn't add any of the players down here below. Let me hook you up with a free start sit question voucher so you can send in this again for free. And whatever player that you want to consider, just put down here in this little pool for me. That way I can go through and I can fill this stuff in for you. I'm going to go May over Darnold's, but I can't tell what you're asking for the flex. So I hooked you up with the free start sit question so you can send one in. And yeah, please just next time Like, put who you're considering underneath if possible. But let me mark that as complete, and we will refresh this, see if we can get some more questions coming in. Okay. So 44 MSU, always happy to see you, my guy. Here, running back, Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs are all very appealing starts, dear God. I think it's really between Chase Brown, Kenneth Walker for me. Neither running back has a good matchup. Based off Brown seeing the 11 targets last week, which obviously we're not expecting to repeat this week, but even if that gets cut in half, you still have a massive role as a receiver. Until we see Khalil get some volume here, it's tough to assume that it happens right away. So then we go Chase Brown at running back. And then I don't know who we're going to tight end. Obviously, McBride on bye. And then down here in the flex, I'm going to go Kenneth Walker over Josh Jacobs. Yes, and I wish I was in your scenario. Like, there's no, now that I think about it, there's no team like in the flock league that is anywhere close to having the luxury of benching Josh Jacobs. I didn't even see that you had Puka for the flex. You're telling me that we have Puka for the flex? Dear God. I would play Puka over Debo, and I would play both running backs over Debo as well. It is tough to say that, though, with Debo looking so damn good with no Kittle. Like, Debo looks like he's ready to crush. E-Dog coming out with our next question. Here, we need two flexes between Hopkins, Jennings, Ridley, Tillman. Tough spot now that you have no Kittle between Jennings and Tillman. I still probably go Tillman. I can kind of go back and forth. I'm definitely going to go Hopkins, though. Where Hopkins, you are seeing him just continuously expand the role in KC. Obviously, last week he was not great, but it was also a horrendous matchup that you had as well going up against the Bills. So I think we go ahead. I think we take Hopkins and Tillman. Now, Dion G says, hey, Mason, having some difficulty deciding my tight end flex this week. Thank you so much. No, thank you. Here, Jonnu Smith actually has been very appealing. Like, Jonnu Smith is continuing to see more and more usage. It's a pretty good matchup as well going up against the Raiders. Over here for the flex, we're going to take Travis Etienne. Absolutely hate the offense. Etienne's been a bum as well. But we have no Tank Bigsby. You get the guaranteed touches. Jonnu Ingram, I probably still go Jonnu Smith despite this offense being horrendous. Now, of course, with that being said, I really don't want to start two Jags. Ingram, Jonnu's at 31.5. Ingram is at 46.5. So that's what I was saying. I think you have to go with Evan Ingram regardless. I don't want to start two Jacksonville Jaguars, but Evan Ingram is just going to see so much volume here when you have no Christian Kirk in this offense. It is a very safe play. Now, Average Joe filling this in. This should have been a free question for you. No, you sent this, never mind, before I applied the thing. I thought we had an issue with the vouchers for a second. I'm ready to go Kareem Hunt here as our RB2. Get the guaranteed workload. A wide receiver, we're going to go London despite it being a tough matchup. And then down there in the flex, I think I will take CeeDee Lamb. We're obviously, it's a garbage offense here in Dallas. But CeeDee Lamb still had the 10 targets this past week. He was right there for a touchdown as well. And if he did score the touchdown, I think the narrative would be a lot different. Now, of course, I'm not trying to carry water here for Lamb. Like we were talking all last week about how garbage this offense was and get out of Lamb while you still can. But here, I think he's still somebody that you have to start, right? Still probably have to put him in. Now, let's move this over to our next question from Sam. Here, I'm assuming what you were wanting is one flex out of Amari, Sutton, Higgins. Obviously, it's a tough spot with Amari not playing early, but honestly, Higgins plays late as well, so it's not that big of a deal. I plan on Amari as our top option, assuming he is good to go. You have no Keon Coleman. You have no Dalton Kincaid. It's a game environment where they'll probably have to throw the ball against KC, even if it's a tough matchup. And then I think Higgins will be the backup play here if Amari's not good to go. But let me refresh this. So how many more questions do we have in the queue? We don't have too many more questions in the queue. Knocking these off quickly. We should be able to get 2 questions in the chat before the game start. But of course, if you want to get a guaranteed answer, these are all the questions that we have in the queue. So to be answered very, very quickly, you can find the link to flockfantasy.com in the live chat that says ask a question here. Or you could go over to or you can go over to flockfantasy.com, hit the personal advice button in the top right corner. Then you can send in a super message, start sit question, trade question, team review, whatever you are wanting. Again, if you wanted that team review, I would highly recommend taking advantage of the offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy. It's just going to be the cheapest way for you to get the team review, to be completely honest. As if you go over to Underdog and use promo code FLOCK, all you got to do is make a $10 deposit, and then you'll be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, plus a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half total yard for the game today. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night as well. Just make sure if you wanted the free team review, you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way we know who to credit with that free team review voucher. Okay. So let's move this over to our next question. This is one of those free team reviews coming out from Stacks. My guy, thank you so much for taking advantage of that offer. Excited to dive into this for you. It says, yo, what's up, Mason? Team sitting at an average of 5-5. Any advice on what to do to improve the team, or should we just sit and wait for the results? So we are sitting with the best team according to the league analyzer. We have the most value in this league. Now, obviously, I don't know if that means you're in a spot where we can go through and justify some of the losses earlier in the season based off an injury, and that's exactly what we can do. We had CMC banged up. Now CMC is back, arguably the RB1 or the RB2 rest of season here. Regardless of what it is, you could not be more excited to have McCaffrey back in with his regular workload. But anyway, looking at quarterback, we are in a really comfortable spot. We have Daniels. Daniels obviously isn't the same caliber of the player that he was before, but I think you still have to call him the must-start option, even if over the past 2 weeks the rushing volumes come down. It is still just a very small sample of his disappointing 2-week stretch. Looking at what we have at running back, we are currently sitting with CMC, so the elite RB1, Aaron Jones, another running back with the guaranteed volume. That is a very safe start that you can just jam in weekly. And then we have the premium handcuffs with Mason, Spears, Ray Davis down there on the bench. So it's a team where we are absolutely loaded at running back at the very top. The depth, very limited. And it's a roster where depth does matter because we can start up to 4 wide receivers weekly. So as you go over to wide receiver and we have A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, every single one of these guys we can get into our starting lineup every week, which, I mean, you're in a great spot. I actually think Tyreek Hill is going to be better going into the future than what he has been. And then going over to tight end, you're currently sitting with the combo of TJ Hawkinson as well as Dalton Kincaid. Hawkinson looks like a mid tight end 1 rest of season. This is a phenomenal team top to bottom. The only thing that I could possibly say with this team is you are maybe wanting to go ahead and pivot with some of the options that we have down on the waiver wire. where if you were looking at the waiver wire currently, you have somebody like Chris Olave that potentially gives you upside in the long term for the fantasy football playoffs with a team that you need to start, or you can start up to 4 wide receivers weekly. Obviously not super, super comfortable saying that, but still. Going over to what we have with Aaron Rodgers. For me, I'd rather have Drake May on the waiver wire than Rodgers, but the thing is, I don't know. You have Daniels and Drake May with the same bye week. Presumably, the only way you're ever starting a backup quarterback here anyway is for the Daniels bye, so maybe Rodgers does make more sense. And there aren't too many quarterbacks on waivers as well. So I'm fine with us rostering the backup quarterback. Really, the only thing I would do is I would drop Adonai Mitchell for Chris Olave. Because there is a shot in which you have no Olave rest of season and he ends up being a wasted roster spot. That's in the range of outcomes. But I'm just trying to think of top end, best case scenario here for how one of these guys gets into your starting lineup. And now that Pittman's healthy, as well as Anthony Richardson is good to go, I don't exactly see how we can ever get Adonai Mitchell into our lineup with how strong it is. This is by far and away the best team in the league now that we have a couple of these injured players back in. I could see how Olave gets into our lineup for the fantasy football playoffs. I couldn't see how Adonai Mitchell does. So I don't necessarily think any trades would make sense here. The only thing that I think could potentially make sense would be going through and dropping AD Mitchell, picking up Chris Olave, and then once we're through the Daniels bye, then obviously we don't need Rodgers. But I think that's all I have for you. I really hope that I was able to help you out in some way with this. Again, thank you so much for being a member of the flock. I really do appreciate you, and good luck. But honestly, you don't need it. We're the number one team in the league analyzer, and we are absolutely set to crush. Now, our next question is a start-sit question coming out from TJ. Here, we need a wide receiver and a flex. Wide receiver, we are going to go with Nico Collins. Ports are, he's 100% good to go. Zero hesitation with that either. So you just go ahead. You just jam him in if you have him. I'm going over to the flex. Puka Nacua is also just an absolute must-start option every single week. Obviously, Lamb is somebody that I'm still starting in most scenarios, but not where you just have a juggernaut team like this. You're in a really good spot. It does suck, obviously, to have the Kittle injury and have to play Dawson Knox, but hopefully Kittle's back next week. Now, Dez coming out with our next start sit question says, need some help at the flex. Also, Love or May. I'm going to go Love over Drake May, but Drake May is very interesting this week. We have no Hubbard this week. We have no Evans. We have no Wandale. We have no Harrison. We have no Auden. So, honestly, I really just think you have to play Rico Dowdle here. Obviously, Estime is expanding his role here in Denver, and Estime is looking a lot more interesting than he was. But at the same time, with Audric Estime, this is a running back that has not had a single target all season. Whereas Dowdle is going to be the full 3-down workhorse, and he's going to get usage as a receiver as well. Now, D Stocks coming out with our next question. This is CMC and Achane. Tough wide receiver call. We also have Tillman. Okay, so we are just absolutely crushing it running back. Wide receiver, I think you need to go ahead. You need to jam in Ladd McConkey and a good matchup against Cincy where they're probably going to have to throw the ball. Wide receiver, if Amari plays, we're going Amari here. And then for the flex, I would still go Downs over Waddle. But actually, I'm sorry. If you have Tillman, you go Tillman over Downs. Go Tillman over Downs. For whatever reason, I don't see Tillman on the tool. So yeah, go Ladd, Amari, and Tillman. Ladd, Amari, Tillman. Downs, obviously, less exciting with A-Rich under center and Pittman back in. Wide receiver here for Bobby. appreciate you, my guy. We are going to be starting Jaden Reed. And more likely than not, we have Ramondre. Ramondre, decent matchup. I still probably go Hopkins, a full PPR format. What we have seen consistently all season now is Ramondre plays well if you're looking at games in which the Patriots keep it close to the Patriots win. Here, you do have the Patriots as pretty heavy dogs in this matchup in particular. Now, B. Micah says start Hopkins over Lamb with Lamb's status for Monday night. I think you can if you really wanted to. From what I have read, it sounds like the Lamb back injury is not super serious and Lamb should be good to go. Now, obviously, they could be lying to us. They could be wrong. The Dallas Cowboys are also playing for nothing, so they could just play it extremely safe. I'm operating under the assumption that CeeDee Lamb's good to go. But again, I also thought George Kittle was going to be good to go today, and obviously we were wrong there. Let me refresh and see if we have any more questions coming in. We have two longtime members of the flock that are always out here. First one with Hogan. My guy, I have not seen this team for you, and this is hilarious. Okay, so let me walk everybody through what's going on here. Assuming the league analyzer is pulling this in correctly, this is a 4-team fantasy football league. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is a 4-team fantasy football league, which obviously nobody's plan A is to play in a 4-team fantasy football league. But if you have 3 close buddies and y'all can only get a 4-team league going, it is what it is. It's the best you can do. But if you are going to be playing in a 4-team league, what you need to do is you need to go through and you need to make the starting lineup as large as it possibly can be. So if you are looking at this starting lineup, you have to go through and start 4 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 3 receivers, 3 tight ends, and 3 flex spots. So if you're ever going to play in a 4-team league, this is probably how you got to run it. Running back, I am going to go Chase Brown over Montgomery. Montgomery would definitely be the next best option here. Probably get him in one of the flexes. The wide receivers for the flex, you have Hopkins, Reed. You just take the running backs with the guaranteed touches. You go Dobbins, you go Montgomery. Really the only spot you can pivot is going with Jaden Reed over DeAndre Swift, based off Swift just being in a much worse offense, of course. And I think the stat that I heard was the Bears haven't scored a touchdown in their last 29 drives. And now Hogan's next question, a little bit more of a normal league. This is a 10-teamer. Tight end, we have Hawkinson with no McBride this week. Running back, Hunt, still a must-start option with the 3-down workload. We're going to go Lamb, and then you have no Tracy, White, or Bucky. So it's really between Ladd and Mooney. For me, I think you can really just flip the dice here. I would rather have Ladd in the better matchup. Obviously, Mooney is absolutely crushed so far this season. I just really do like the setup for Ladd, where you're going up against a softer Bengals defense, and you're at a spot in which it should be a game environment where you actually do have the Chargers forced to throw the ball, which isn't the case most weeks. Now, our next question coming out from Mr. Filthy Wubs. Always happy to see you. It's been with us for years. Wide receiver between DJ Moore, Dell, Mooney, and Brian Thomas. I'm going to go with Mooney. Obviously, you can make an argument with Mooney. That's a tough matchup. You could also make an argument that London's going to draw the bad matchup. Mooney maybe is the guy that's going to be able to eat in it. But overall, lowered expectations for the Atlanta Falcons offense if you are looking at their implied team total. But Brian Thomas Jr., garbage offense. DJ Moore, garbage offense. And at the same time, Tank Dell, you have additional target competition in the form of Nico Collins here. Okay, so let's refresh this, see if we have anything else coming in or if we're going to pivot over to the live chat. Okay, we have a couple more coming in. They'll pivot over to the chat. Mr. Filthy Wubs coming out with our next question. Here's start sit. In the flex spots, we are just going to go with the running backs with the guaranteed workloads. We're going to go with Montgomery in a matchup where the Lions are favored by about 2 touchdowns. And we are going to go ahead and take Kareem Hunt as the running back that is getting every single touch out of his backfields in what is a good rushing offense, but of course a tough matchup here against Buffalo. Now, Kenny coming out with our next question. Here, quarterback, we are going to go ahead, play the combo of Mahomes as well as Justin Herbert and bench AR, even if Anthony Richardson's definitely interesting in a super flex league, just based off rushing upside. I think you can't afford to wait a week and see what it looks like. His thing is, he wasn't even running the ball too much before he got benched. I'm going down to the flex spots. Najee maybe looks a little bit less appealing with Warren good to go. I think here you probably go ahead and you play Cedric Tillman and Jawan Jennings. Where with Tillman, obviously, is crushed over the past 3 weeks. He is getting a considerable amount of volume and what should be a high volume passing attack. And in the case of Jennings, we can assume that the market share numbers actually look a little bit better with no George Kittle here in San Fran. Now, Dan Arquette, always happy to see us, says Ridley or Lamb, with Lamb questionable for Monday. So I would still plan on playing CeeDee Lamb, both wide receivers in absolute garbage offenses. The last I've seen, it seems like Lamb's going to be good to go. I can go ahead and try to find a more recent update with CeeDee Lamb for you. Now, last I read, injury didn't seem serious. But also, the Dallas Cowboys are playing for nothing, right? Ooh, okay. This is actually interesting from the Coach Speak Index. Okay. McCarthy has a 95% reliability rating on Injury Coach Speak. Our database has 6 instances of McCarthy using this not of high concern / don't have any concern phrase over the last 3 years. All of those players suited up, and we expect Lamb to play Monday night. So just showing you everything that I'm seeing. I fully expect Lamb to play on Monday Night Football despite the new back injury. Don't care what your expectations are for. Yeah, I think I'm planning on playing CeeDee Lamb here. And obviously you can make an argument, oh, the offense is bad. Well, the offense is just bad, if not worse, in Tennessee. At least if you're looking at how the projections are this week. So, I don't know. Sucks because Lamb plays on Monday. If you wanted to pick up Tolbert just in case, I'm not going to follow you whatsoever for doing so. But Hill J23 coming out with a question. Here, running back, we're looking at Pollard versus Estime. I'm going to go Pollard. Well, you'll still have some usage as a receiver here. Half PBR formats, definitely a lot closer. With Estime, obviously, he's trending in the direction of taking this from Pollard. But I think you can wait another week before you make that flop. And then wide receiver, we are just absolutely dominant here. Like, we're benching Tyreek Hill, and I don't even blame you for it. So, honestly, what we probably end up doing is you probably should trade a wide receiver and go get an upgrade at running back that way. But we'll have Connor coming back in after the bye. Great team. Okay. Cobra Kyron says, Ridley or Adams, we need max upside / points. I'm going to be going with Devontae Adams in that instance. If you are looking at the implied team total that you have for the Jets, right now the Jets have an implied team total of 24.5 points. We are told that, according to sportsbooks, that the Jets are in line for a pretty big bounce back this week, at least offensively. And then if you are looking at the target volume, Devontae Adams has effectively been averaging 10 targets a game since he has been a New York Jet here. So I think you go ahead. I think you take Adams. Okay. Let me refresh this. Arc coming through with our next question. Here for the flex, we are looking at no Benson, Herbert not viable, no Rashad White, Jerry Jeudy not viable. I guess this is a spot where you have to play Amari Cooper and Ricky Pearsall. Again, not super excited to tell anybody to play Pearsall this week, while there's probably very few players that I'm rooting for more than Sticky Ricky at this point. Realistically speaking, he should be very low on the target totem pole. But when you have no Kittle, that knocks another weapon out of this offense. Should be a high-scoring environment going up against Seattle. So am I super excited about it? No. But I would definitely play him over like Jerry Jeudy, which would effectively be the only other option that we're looking at. And then if Amari doesn't play, then RIP. Pick up Curtis Samuel. Now, Mr. Philly Wubb's coming out with our next question. Here, wide receiver, I think we are going to go with DeAndre Hopkins. If you're looking at Hopkins expanding the role in KC, last week was not phenomenal, but I mean, he got by in a really tough matchup against Denver. Darnell Mooney has a tough matchup with a much lower total here for this Atlanta offense than we're typically used to going up against Denver. You could make an argument for Shakir if Amari were to miss. Like, I actually probably would go Shakir over Hopkins if Amari misses, based on the fact that you'd be in a spot in which you have no Keon. Not only do you have no Keon, but at the same time, you would have no Kincaid. So it should be a pretty easy spot. And no Amari if Amari misses. To assume Shakir gets a ton of volume. Oh, dear God. Your boy is tired. But let's move over and let's get some of these questions going in the chat here. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. Would be happy to try to get to as many as I possibly can. And also, again, if you have not done so already, please go down there, hit that like button on this live stream, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we live stream every single day. I've not missed a single day of live streaming during this season, literally for 5 years. But Sunday morning streams are by far and away the most important for us. So if you were ever going to hit that like button, I would kindly ask that you do it on a Sunday morning stream. And also, drop any questions you have in the live chat. Let's see. Nick says Jameis or AR. With Richardson, I would say from a passing volume perspective, he's not going to come close to Jameis. The difficulty, of course, is Rich, you're getting the rushing upside. If it's a four-point passing touchdown format, that rushing upside matters a ton. Can y'all spam the chat? Would you rather have Anthony Richardson or Jameis in your lineup this week? Are you going to go Richardson or Jameis? I'd probably go Rich. I would go Anthony Richardson, to be honest with you. If it was my team, 4-point passing touchdown, give me a Rich. 6-point passing touchdown format, the rushing upside matters a little bit less. And I think you can go ahead and you can take Anthony Richardson. I'm sorry, you can go with Jameis. But we got Winston, AR. Winston, AR. Winston, AR. Drispa, I don't even know if we want to. This is just a dumb question. I'm sorry. Mason, hypothetically speaking, Caleb Williams is traded for Mahomes plus a first-round pick. What's the Chiefs' record if the season started over? So Chiefs 9-0 right now, winning pretty much every game within one score. What's their record? I know what everybody wants to say. They want to say, oh, Mahomes hasn't been that good. The Chiefs' record wouldn't be that different with a bad quarterback like Caleb. That's not the truth. Realistically speaking. Every game the Chiefs win is within one score. That final drive, Mahomes gets there every single week. I think they'd be 5-4, 4-5. If you pivot from Mahomes to Caleb. Roman says DK or London. I have them ranked effectively back-to-back this week. Obviously, it is a very tough matchup for London going up against the Denver Broncos. I'd still probably go London, though, because it's not like it's a super easy spot for DK going up against the Niners. LOL JK says, did you know if the Chiefs lost every one-score game, they'd be 2-7? I saw that graphic earlier. I think maybe was it Barstool put it out? I don't know who I saw it from. But yeah, I saw that they were like, if you flip every one-score game in the other direction, how the standings would look like. And it's like the Bengals fly up, the Chiefs fly down. And I know a lot of people want to say, oh, one-score game, it's a small sample, it's random, blah, blah, blah. For me, I think that means, oh, okay, look at the teams who are coached well. Look at the teams who have a quarterback that can get it done at the very end. Which, I mean, no team is coached better. No team has a quarterback that can get it done at the very end, like the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's see. Josh says Tillman or Hopkins and Knox or Taysom. I'm going to go Hopkins over Tillman, and I'm going to go Taysom over Knox, even though I completely understand if you wanted to go in the opposite direction. Completely understand if you wanted to pivot to the opposite way. Okay. Joseph says Aaron Jones or Kenneth Walker. You definitely have the much better matchup for Jones than you do Kenneth Walker, but last time we saw Walker go up against the Niners, he ended up having 8 targets out of the backfield. So, I mean, what we have consistently seen is even if Seattle strays away from the run when they fall behind, you still have a bunch of usage for Kenneth Walker as a receiver. So, for me, I think that Kenneth Walker is just a very safe play. I'm going to go Walker. Saltwater says, do you start Lamar against the Steelers or do you pivot? Obviously, the Steelers have a phenomenal defense. If you look historically, Lamar has struggled against the Steelers. So here's the accurate, or I don't say the accurate. Here's the reasonable question that you can come away with. Do you rank Lamar Jackson below QB1 this week, or do you still have him at QB1? It's not do you start or bench him. Lamar Jackson is still a quarterback that you are starting every single week regardless of matchup. He's still, I mean, the head of the Mount Rushmore of the guys that are going to run the ball and give you passing volume. But the last thing you would ever do is bench Lamar Jackson due to a matchup. Even if the Ravens offensively struggle, even if Lamar doesn't have a great real-life day, for fantasy, he can still absolutely crush based off rushing. Like, if you think Lamar is going to... I mean, if you're even considering benching Lamar Jackson, just go take some lower thans with this Ravens offense. Underdog has Lamar higher, lower, 22 points. This is probably the highest projection you have from any player here. So if you wanted to go with the lower than 22 fantasy points for Lamar on Underdog, you do you. I wouldn't do it because I think Lamar can absolutely crush based off his rushing any given week. But yeah, that would be more interesting than benching Lamar Jackson. Tavion says Dawson Knox or Taysom Hill. I would rather have Taysom. The only instance in which I think you go Knox is if not only do you have no Kincaid, but you also have no Amari. Edward says Jennings over Mooney this week or over Adams. You definitely can't play him over Adams. Again, this is a spot where you're expecting a bounce back for this Jets offense. And at the same time, you are seeing 10 targets a game for Devontae Adams here as a Jet. Jennings versus Mooney, you can maybe have that conversation. And again, if you go over and look at the projections that you have on Underdog, they are extremely close. Jawan Jennings is higher, lower, 58.5 receiving yards. Mooney is higher, lower, 56.5 receiving yards. So they are pretty much back to back. Jennings is more likely to see the touchdown in his offense, though. Okay. Dakota says Rico Dowdle or Tank Dell. There's just no way in hell you can start Tank Dell with Nico back. I'm going to go with Dowdle. Obviously, it's a garbage offense. Don't have much faith with Dowdle. But what you can say here is you can at least say that you have the 3-down workload. So even if it's a garbage offense, he could be viable. But I think we had a couple questions come in on the site. So let me go ahead and pivot over to those real quick. Then we get back to the questions in the live chat. And obviously, if you ever wanted to get any guaranteed answers to your questions, you can always just head over to flockfantasy.com or hit the link in the live chat that says ask a question here. And then you can send in a super message, start set question, trade question, team review, whatever you are wanting. Again, I would say if you wanted the team review, definitely the cheapest way for you to get it is to take advantage of the offer that we have over on Underdog Fantasy, where if you go over to Underdog Fantasy and use promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, at the same time, you're going to be getting a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half total yard for the game for the game today. I apologize. Plus, you'll get a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single day as well. Just make sure if you wanted that free team review, you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way, we're able to know which account to credit with that free team review voucher. But thank you. And let's go ahead and let's pivot over to some of these other questions that we have on the site. This one coming out from a longtime member of the flock in Batmac. Appreciate you. Excited to check this out. Says Jameson or Travis Etienne. I am going to go with Etienne over Jameson or Estime. God, every single time I see Estime, I go Etienne. In terms of Jameson versus Estime, it's close. Obviously, you're not getting consistent target volume with Jameson. You are just banking on the long touchdown being there. This is an environment where you'd assume that you don't have a ton of passing volume. For Detroit, where they are able to just run the ball over and over and over again as 2 touchdown favorites. Estime's had a total of 0 targets out of the backfield so far this season. Can I see what the Underdog projections have this at? Estime is higher, lower, 60.5 total yards. Issue is you just get nothing as a receiver. Jameson's higher, lower, 50.5. You have the Broncos favored in this game. It's a decent matchup, decent environment. I think you can go Estime. I'm not excited about it by any means, though. Definitely Estime is trending in the right direction, though. He does look like he is the starter here in Denver. Now, Dustin coming out with our next question here says, Mason, my team is awful. Second quarterback spot is actually a super flex. Please say A-Rich and Waddle will produce. We'll see, my guy. We have no other option but to go A-Rich. Because if we have freaking Waddle wide receiver 2, it's not like we're playing a wide receiver in that super flex slot. And then going down here, you have no other option but to go Travis Etienne. You have to play Etienne over Addison. With A-Rich, obviously, the hope is not for him to be a good quarterback. The possibility of him coming out here and providing you passing volume is very limited. The hope with A-Rich, of course, is that we end up getting the rushing upside, which is a possibility. With Waddle, you do have a positive in that at least it should be a very good matchup. And this week, you do have the Dolphins projected out to be a top 5 scoring offense in the NFL. So I think that there is some hope with Waddle. Is there a ton? No. The main question that I have for my own team is, do I start like Waddle or Najee? Now that Warren's going to go. Waddle, they ended up taking down his pick. I wonder what direction that went in. It was higher, lower, 43.5 receiving yards. Still higher, lower, 43.5. Najee, 64.5 yards. But again, if you're looking at Waddle, it's a good game environment. It's a good matchup for him to be in. And then Pace DeMace coming out with our next question says, is Pittman and ETN too much for Mike Evans? Hell no. Go get Mike Evans here relatively easily. Pittman is the number 2 option in a low volume passing attack. Travis Etienne, probably the 3-down running back in a garbage offense at this point, but still just not much upside in Jacksonville. See, I think you have to go through. I think you have to make this deal for Mike Evans if you can. 100%. Okay. And let me just double check my own team and get y'all's opinion on if you think I should be doing anything else. Because this is a big week for yours truly. As Warren's good to go, so Najee's a little less interesting. Friggin' sucks that Debo's out because Purdy is worse now. Running back, we have Swift, Ramadre in the lineup. Wide receiver, we have Chase, Devonta Smith. Flexes, we have DK Metcalf, Najee Harris. We have James Conner on bye. Our options to get into the starting lineup would either be Waddle or Ricky Pearsall. And we would presumably take out Najee Harris. So please spam the chat. Who would you start? Would you start Pearsall, Najee, or Waddle? Pearsall, Najee, or Waddle? Please let me know. And Debo's not out. Kittle's out. Sidon says, I hate Najee against Baltimore. Wyatt says Najee. Pearsall, Najee. Najee, Pearsall, Pearsall. Najee, Waddle, Waddle, Najee. Najee, Waddle. Sticky Ricky, Najee. Waddle. It's tough. I just don't freaking know. I think it would have been easy if Warren was out. It would have been easy if Kittle plays. But Kittle out, Pearsall gets a bump. Warren in, Najee gets a hit. I guess Najee's averaging over 20 carries a game over the past 3 weeks. But you are 3-point dogs against Baltimore. Probably can't run the ball as much. Obviously, the receiving usage hasn't been there. I think we have to go Najee, though. Obviously, a lot of these games were with no Warren. But the last 4 games, you've seen double-digit points every week. Don't love the matchup, but it is what it is. We got to go with it. Okay. And also, let me see if there are any other interesting tight ends off of waivers. We have no Laporta this week. I picked up Pat Frymuth. I'd go Frymuth over Schultz, Tanner Hudson, Komet. Gesicki's maybe an interesting call. Would y'all play Frymuth or Gesicki this week? Are you going to go Frymuth or Mike Gesicki? You have Higgins back in. Obviously, Tanner Hudson had a considerable amount of volume last week, but so did Gesicki. We got Pat, Mike, Mike, Pat, Mike, Pat. Okay, so it looks like most people are going Pat Frymuth. It's just nerve-wracking. It is nerve-wracking. But anyway, let's get this question going for CDTD. Double flex league, we have Montgomery in one flex. The other flex spot, we are looking at Brian Thomas, Ricky Pearsall, Estime, or Jacoby Myers, effectively. It's a full PBR format. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Myers. Obviously, garbage offense, but the man has essentially seen double-digit targets every single week that he has been healthy since week 3, I want to say. Going up against Miami, it's a spot where they're going to have to probably throw the ball from start to finish. So I think you have to go ahead. I think you just kind of have to take Myers, to be honest. Okay, now our next question coming out from LT Meow. Here, I'm assuming we need a wide receiver and we need a tight ends. I'm going to go Andrews over Taysom, and I'm going to go Tillman over Sticky Ricky. Definitely rooting for Sticky Ricky based off how much we have him in underdog drafts, based off I have him with my own team. But realistically speaking, if you are looking at Ricky Pearsall, we assume that he is the third wide receiver in an offense that can run the ball effectively. And then you should expect the vast majority of volume going through Deebo Samuel. I hope I'm wrong here, but you do have the much larger sample with Deebo than we do with Sticky Ricky. And while Pearsall obviously gets there last week, it was off of only 6 targets. Definitely more interesting of a start this week because you get to see the flash last week, and now you have no Kittle. So you should have more targets available close to the line of scrimmage here. But still, for me, I think it would be a tough spot to put him in. Now, let me refresh this, just see if we had any more questions come in. If not, we'll pivot over to questions in the live chat. Looks like we can get to the questions in the chat. So please let me know if you have any questions in the chat. I'd be super happy to try to get to as many as we can. Povici says Akers, Edwards, or Warren in a half PPR format. I would go Jalen Warren here. Warren is good to go. Should have a receiving role here in Pittsburgh at the very minimum. Sounds like Aaron Jones is healthy. Gus Edwards, I mean, even if he's going to take some usage from Dobbins, it's not going to be where you'd want it to be from. It's going to be the meaningless touches between the 20s that are carries. He's not going to get any receiving usage. So I can't start Akers. I can't start Edwards. I'd go Warren. I think Warren's the best player too. Now, Danny says full BBR, Tony Pollard or Travis Etienne. Still probably going to go Pollard. Obviously, both offenses look to be bad. And at the same time, you do have Spears increasing his role here in Tennessee. But with ETN, we just have not seen we have not had a single week this season with 20 or more fantasy points. And now that you're sitting with no Lawrence as well, I just don't see where the ceiling comes from. Now, RB says Estime or Jalen Warren. I'm definitely going to go with Estime over Warren. I think that Warren has very little to no chance to be the starter here in Pittsburgh, whereas Estime looks like he is slated to just have more work straight up over Javonte. And at the same time, you actually do have Estime and the Broncos favored in this game against the Falcons. Malav says, thoughts on Nick Chubb? Chubb's not going to have the receiving work. So with no usage as a receiver, you have a cap ceiling. The positive is it is an offense that has decent projections. Here in Cleveland, at least better than what we typically are seeing. And coming out of the bye week, hopefully another week removed from this injury, you see him expand his role. Not only do you see him expand his role, but also hopefully at the same time, you end up seeing a little more efficiency from him. But I'm not really wanting to start Nick Chubb. I'd rather avoid it if we can. Alt Not says Dowdle or Estime in a full PPR format. So obviously Estime's in the much better offense at this point. I would still probably go Dowdle though, because what I'm expecting is Estime to have the usage on first and second downs. Whereas it looks like Dowdle is just going to be the 3-down workhorse that you have here in Dallas. So I think it would be very difficult to get away from him until we actually see Estime take more work from Javonte. I know that's the expectation. He had 14 carries last week. Peyton's coming out and saying that Estime is going to continue to see more work in this backfield. But Estime's had a total of 0 targets so far this year. So I think you can afford to wait another week before you make this pivot. And also, real quick, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to the channel. We have live streamed every single day answering fantasy football questions for the past 5 years without missing a day. 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, now 2024. So if you play fantasy football, make sure you subscribe because we are here every single day trying to answer as many questions as we possibly can. Now let's see our next question. Nate Das says, Dowdle or Dell? I'm probably going to go Dowdle here as well. Again, I want to reiterate, it's not like I'm excited about Dowdle. Again, we called it last week, and people gave us so much hate for saying it, that the Dak Prescott injury was going to make this Cowboys offense and affect the players in the offense similarly to what we saw with the Tua injury in Miami. I think we kind of nailed that one. If you are looking at Dowdle, however, you still have the 3-down workload. Tank Dell is just, at this point, a receiver that is extremely difficult to get behind, especially as you end up getting back in Nico Collins, where Dell was barely viable with no Nico Collins. Okay. Let's see. Trap God says sit one, Waddle, Downs, or Dell. For me, and I know y'all are going to hate to hear this, and to be honest with you, I have Waddle in the Flock League, so maybe I'm a little bit biased with this. And y'all know I was very much against Dell this year. I probably benched Dell here. But I think with this is the Dolphins, according to sportsbooks, project out to score significantly more points this week than what you're going to have with the Texans. The Texans will not be in a spot where they are forced to throw the ball, really. They're playing Dallas. How the hell is Dallas going to put points on the board? Dell hasn't been viable, and now you add Nico Collins back in. Now, of course, you can say, well, Mason Waddle hasn't had a game with double-digit points since week 1. And I'd say very good point. Very good point. And to be honest with you, I don't think either's exciting. I would play Downs for sure over both. Okay. And let me see. I think we had another question coming in on the site. So let me answer that real quick. This is Ridley or Ramondre in the flex in a full PPR format. It is tough. Obviously, with Ramondre, he's been very up and down. Ridley is absolutely crushed over the past few weeks, and Ridley has had a tremendous amount of volume with no DeAndre Hopkins in this offense. I still probably go Ramondre with the hope that the offense continues to improve with Drake May under center, as we've seen signs that it may. I mean, again, this is the best we've ever seen. I don't say ever, but the best this season we have seen the Patriots offense project out with an implied team total of 19.5 points. So I would go ahead and I would take Ramondre over Ridley. But let me see if we have any more questions on the site. I don't think that we do. Let me see if there's any interesting underdog picks that maybe we can have fun with today. Can y'all please let me know in the live chat if y'all took any underdog picks, and if so, which ones, so we can look at something. I don't have any boost, so I know whatever we're doing is minus EV, but at the same time, I'm just going to be doing this to have fun for the games today anyway and give us a little bit extra for us to root on. Maybe I go and root for some of the players that I already have in my lineup. Jamar Chase, they currently have higher, lower 14.25 fantasy points. Maybe we go with the higher on Chase. In that instance, assume that we have a bunch of completions for Burrow. Or actually, I don't know. What do we want here? I want to say Burrow doesn't have a pick. Hunter says he likes the Hawkinson receptions. I have not found anything that I've been super excited about this week. Hawkinson, 4.5 receptions. You're going up against Tennessee, though. That's the thing. Where obviously last week, Hawkinson crushes with the 8 receptions to 9 targets. But against Tennessee, you're probably in a spot where, oh, I love this. Debo higher than 11.75 fantasy points. Because my thing with Hawkinson is you more likely than not don't have to have the Vikings throwing the ball a ton here. So if we are looking to have some fun, maybe we go with Chase to have higher than about 14 fantasy points. Burrow to not throw an interception. Debo to have higher than 11.5 fantasy points. And we'll do 5 to win 30. We'll do $5 to win 30. Just say, we win this, we get lunch. How about that? But main thing is I'm rooting for Chase anyway with my own fantasy football team. But and obviously, if y'all wanted to check out any of this, y'all can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the live chat in the description. Promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll get a free Aaron Rodgers pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game today. Sadly, I don't get the free pick because I've already been on Underdog for 4 or 5 years now. So this free pick's only for people who are new to Underdog with code FLOCK. And then also, if you use promo code FLOCK, you will get a free team review voucher over there on flockfantasy.com. Just make sure that you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog. That way, we're able to credit you with that free team review. But let me make sure that we have no more questions on the site. Then we can pivot over to questions in the live chat, which I think we can. So please, if you have any questions in the chat, let me hear them, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Will says start Kenneth Walker or Kareem Hunt. Both running backs in bad matchups, obviously. You actually have a very low implied team total in KC this week. I mean, the Chiefs actually project to be a below average offense, which is kind of crazy. But again, sportsbooks know more than I do. I would still go Kenneth Walker. I mean, with Walker, again, obviously we saw Seattle struggle last time they played San Fran running the ball, but you still had 8 targets for Walker out of the backfield, which saves the day fantasy-wise in a full PPR format. And obviously, you have the big play upside with Walker that maybe you don't have with Hunt at this point of his career. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll take Walker. Mike says Cedric Tillman or Jaden Reed in the flex. I'm going to go with Reed. I think better receiver, better offense. Now, obviously, with that being said, you are going to have more competition, so it's not a super easy call. Zachary says, I don't know what to do for the flex. We're looking at Ricky, Rico, or Downs. For me, I will take the running back with the guaranteed 3-down workload. The running back that's going to have usage as a receiver here as well. I probably am going to be going with Rico Dowdle. I hope I'm wrong with this. I hope Pearsall outscores him. I mean, but you do have McCarthy coming through and saying that they're going to be expanding the role of Dowdle. It's a garbage offense, so obviously you can't be that excited about it, but still. But Teresa coming out says, Mahomes or Cousins? Always appreciate you, Teresa. Teresa, the unsung hero of the live streams, of course. I'm going to go Mahomes. Both quarterbacks have tough matchups. Typically, we see the Chiefs want to be rush heavy. However, this week where they are dogs against Buffalo, they're probably not going to be able to lean on the run. They probably are going to be forced to throw the ball here. Jared says Burrow or Herbert at quarterback. I'm for sure going to go Burrow. I mean, Burrow's been absolutely crushing, and now you get another top weapon back in with T. Higgins. So for me, I think it's kind of an easy spot to take Burrow, to be honest. Timothy says Knox or Kraft. I'm going to go with Tucker Kraft. I think both guys, you're in a similar boat where you are just kind of hunting touchdowns. Obviously, Dawson Knox is a little more appealing now that you have no Kincaid. Not only do you have no Kincaid, but at the same time, you are sitting with no Keon. If Amari gets ruled out as well, you can say, F it. Just go with the guy that's going to have a completely decimated wide receiver room around him with Dawson Knox. There's going to be passing volume in Buffalo regardless, right? Josh Allen's going to get the job done no matter who it's with. Hunter says Chubb or ETN in a half PPR format. So I actually have them ranked very similarly. Obviously, ETN's a little more appealing than it was previously because you get Tank Bigsby ruled out. But I'm still going to go with Nick Chubb just because if you are looking at sportsbook projections, you currently are seeing the Jacksonville Jaguars project to be the worst offense in the league this week. So I think it is a tough spot to go through and tough spot to play ETN regardless. And obviously, it's just an absolute brutal matchup here as well. Hugh says Lamb or James Cook, full PPR. I don't think you have to roll the dice with Lamb in this instance. I think you just take the running back with the 3-down usage and a good offense, even if it is obviously an absolute garbage matchup for James Cook. AFC coming out says Nico or Garrett. Nico is immediately a top 5 wide receiver the second that he is back in. For the love of God, you go, Nico. But it looks like we are here for kickoff. Really do appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for spending your fine Sunday morning with me. I really need a win this week. I'm really hoping my team can come through, but besides my team, I'm rooting for your team as well. Primarily my team, though, to be completely honest with you, because it is a big, big week. If you've been watching the Flock League, you know we are taking down the #1 team in the league with Zach this week. We already limited Terry McLaurin to 2 points. I'm going to call him 2-point Terry from now on. But much love. I really do appreciate y'all sticking with me this fine Sunday. I will obviously be premiering the video tonight, talking about everything that happens in the games today. So I really hope I get to see you there. Subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. And yeah, I really hope I get to see you after the games tonight.